Gideon Soesman, co-founder, managing director of GreenSoil Investments. Welcome to the evokeAG studio.
Thank you for having me.
One thing you would like delegates to take away from what you've spoken about at the conference, what do you think that would be?
We've mostly spoken about an example in Israel where we have quite a successful ecosystem in ag and food tech. The way it was built, the way it is working, how maybe other countries can learn from it. But I think more importantly, how we can work together with an ecosystem in Australia.
We'll drill down into that in a second. But you come from a banking and investment background, but your focus has turned more to agri-food in recent times. Why is that? What's the motivation there for you?
So it was around 8 years ago that together with my partner, Alan Greenberg, we started looking at different investment opportunities. And we identified ag and food as a sector where a lot was happening, a huge need, all the fundamentals were there. But what was lacking were a specialized and focused investor in the space. So we said, you know what, there's a big opportunity here, let's start investing in this.
So you've established GreenSoil Investments. Is there an area that particularly appeals to you then with that investment strategy?
So at GreenSoil, we invest in two verticals. One is ag and food, and there we invest over the entire value chain. And our focus there is in Israel. And our second vertical is in building innovations, or what's also called prop tech. And there we invest from a separate team in North America.
Right. So what do you think Australia could take away from Israel then in terms of, you've been building this strategy for a long time in terms of startups and developing technology. It's not an overnight thing, is it?
Yeah, and I think there are some specific things in Israel that it's difficult to compare with Australia, and definitely difficult to learn from Israel. I mean, one of the success factors is the fact that Israel is a very tiny, small country where everyone knows each other and everyone is stuck to each other. So I gave the example in one of the panels that we have around 800 companies in ag and food tech, 800 startups. They're all 1.5 hour driving distance from our office. So that, of course, is something you will never have in Australia. Things that could be exported to other countries is a government system that's very supportive, government supporting directly startups, but also supporting incubators that invest in startups. Global venture capital funds coming into the country to look for innovation. So it's a lot of, there are a lot of factors. It's a combination, it's a synergy between different factors, and maybe one of the most important ones is also the DNA of the Israelis.
Yeah, well, that goes back, doesn't it? I mean, a lot of your technology some of the technology early, the data stuff comes out of military applications, doesn't it? A mentality there, and how can we take that and apply it?
Absolutely. As always, a lot of innovation comes out of a need. So when you have a tiny country in a hot climate where there's a lack of water, I mean, I always say we only have 2 lakes and one of them is a Dead Sea. So no irrigation, it's a hot climate, an environment where neighbors don't really like us, so you need to take care of your own food production. And out of that need, this whole ecosystem was built. And as you mentioned yourself, Army is a very important factor there. A lot of, especially the precision ag technology comes out of the Army. So it's not only the technology that's developed there, but these are also 18-year-old kids that have to go into Army service. They sign up for another 2-3 years, and then they get responsibility of huge projects in R&D, and they really learn to develop the technology. And when they come out of the Army, they apply it into civil sectors like ag.
The Army, the military side of it, but you also have I understand the chief scientist reports directly to the Prime Minister. So science is tied in tightly from the top of the country down.
Absolutely, and it starts actually bottom up. It starts in schools where kids learn a lot of science. And it's not only learning the basic science, it's also applying it. A lot of projects where kids set up their own businesses and to really learn how to become an entrepreneur. That the government is supporting startup with direct investments. And of course also leading universities. Israel has about 150 scientists per 10,000 capita. That's by far number one worldwide. I think number 2 is the USA with about 75 per 10,000.
That's quite an astounding ratio, isn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned a moment ago that there's something like 800 startups, I think you were saying. Is it too successful in some regards? Because is it a time for consolidation, that to bring some of those things under one tent or onto one platform and have a bigger solution?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. First of all, they can't be all successful. If all startups would be successful, then you have a problematic ecosystem. Part of the success is that 90% fails. Sounds funny, but you need to have a big deal flow of early stage companies trying something, and most of them fail, but the ones that don't become like the large companies. And again, that goes back to the DNA of the Israeli society, where setting up your startup and failing, it's okay. It is part of the game. Now, of course, within that wider space of 800 companies, there are a lot of companies that maybe they do not exactly do the same, but they apply to the same customer. They should be part of the same platform. If you go to a farmer, and one of the problems is that today a farmer, he opens his door and you may come for a meeting, but behind you there are 6 other startups standing in line because they also want to talk to the farmer. Now, one comes with a smart sensor, the other comes with a little bit different sensor, the third one comes with an application, and of course all this needs to come into a one larger platform. The same as today you buy a computer and it has a Microsoft Office with Excel and Word and PowerPoint and everything on it. You don't want to go and shop for every program separately.
I find it's okay to fail. An interesting comment coming from a bloke who hands out money, an investor. I know you don't just hand it out, but Australian investors, not from my recent memory, would be too comfortable with that phrase. It's okay to fail.
Yeah. Well, again, it's part of the statistics. So, of course, as an investor, you want to make sure that your success rate is as high as possible. So you do your due diligence, so you do your background check, and you check the team, which is, of course, a very important part of it. But at the end, you have to know when you go into this business that you will never get to a 100% success rate. And that's, by the way, something I always tell my investors, just that you know, 50% of the companies will go bankrupt. It's part of what we're doing. But what we're also doing is working very closely with that other 50% to make them really global leaders in their space.
So you're here in Australia. Has anything caught your eye as an investor?
Well, first of all, for us, what's most interesting is the market opportunity. Because Israel has a lot of innovation, but it's a tiny country without a market. And for us, Australia is not only a large market, but it's also a gateway into Asia. And that's really what I'm looking for here, to make sure that our companies can have a distribution channel into Australia, but also through Australia into other countries in the region.
What do you think would be the key message that... I'll start that again. The startup mentality and culture of Israel has been a very big focus here at the conference. What do you think one key thing that maybe Australian delegates could take away from that?
I think the key thing is it all boils down at the end to trying to build your company and just go for it. And I think that's a spirit that we see a lot in Israel. Where young entrepreneurs, even if someone will tell them at the first meeting, you know what you're trying to do is impossible, it won't work, the entrepreneur will turn around and say, you know what, I'll show you it can be done. And I think that's an important message. If you're an entrepreneur and if you believe what you're doing and someone tells you it can't be done, don't go home. Just try a little bit harder.
Gideon Soesman, co-founder and also managing partner of GreenSoil Investments. Thank you for joining us in the Evoke studio.
Thank you.